Chapter 4. A Parting of Ways. As much as they had wanted to spend this time together, just the two of them and the scent of the gingerbread and warmth from the oven, the simple fact was that they had other duties to attend to at the same time. It was Harvest Eve, and as the regular customers began to enter, so we went out to see to their needs. As they did, those with special holiday orders began arriving too, each one asking for their treasures. He listened to her adorable voice ring out, speak familiar names that answered her with holiday greetings, May even calling out to him from over the counter. He replied, his voice filling the room for the first time that morning, exchanging with them wishes of happiness. He saw her still running back and forth, fetching orders, and soon sought to assist her. She stopped him at the door, gently placing her hoof to his chest. He looked down at her with a puzzled expression. At once, she lifted her hoof and pointed to the frosting that sat resolutely on his nose. He looked at her cross-eyed once more, and they giggled in tune. It would, hardly, to do with have with seeing public eye him adorn, even if it was a holiday flair. He consented to let her deal with those shop owners beyond, while he proceeded to work on the gingerbread house, letting his wife see to the customers. Sometimes they knew you had to be apart from those you would rather be very near. But it was one of those many lessons they learned in their lives together, one that was sadly repeating itself. Carrot awoke early, made his way first to the bathroom, then to the small hallway. He paused at the top of the stairs, listened to the door of the bedroom. A breath lingered there, still sounding out peacefully even as the dawn threw through the house. With a sigh of relief, he went down to the stairs on silent hose. The early morning light of the summer day still caught across all the items he had made the night before. He glanced them over one more time and began to pack them away in their containers. Slowly, he placed all the baked goods within the salad bags and turned to make himself breakfast. As always, he made her some too, left the small meal sitting there, possibly for hours. Today, though, some small movement at the top of the stairs caught his ears, and even as he gathered the salad bags, her hose came down the stairs into the kitchen. "Oh, are you leaving already?" came a drawn-out voice, one that seemed almost worn away. "Today was the day you were telling me about, right? I didn't want to miss it. Today is the last day at the mill, right?" "Yes, Mom. Today is my last day," Carrot said as he looked up at him. "Okay, I didn't think I was about to buy you anything, she began. Carrot looked down and saw how lost she seemed, almost floating in her own thoughts. "That's okay, Mom. You don't need to buy me anything for my last day on the job," he answered as he forced a small laugh. "If you like to, you could buy me something when I open my bakery." At the mention of the shop, her eyes rose to meet his. The lines beneath them wrinkled into a small smile, then deflated. As they did, her head fell lower and her entire frail, thin frame seemed to be highlighted by it. "Mom," he said, his host sounding across the old familiar floorboards. Mom, are you going to be alright with me moving out? You haven't said much about it since I told you I closed the bake shop." "It's only natural for a cult to want its own space," she said, her eyes moving from side to side, seeming to look at everything in the room except him, "especially when he has a male friend." "Cupcake's been asking about you," he said, lowering his head to look at her. Would you like to meet her?" Clifton brought his mother's eyes back up. An expression of happy surprise grew there. Do you mean it? I mean, you don't have to, but if you do, I'd love to meet her," exclaimed the older mare. "Would you want her to meet me?" Carrot stepped forward and laid his head across her withers. With some relief, she lifted her own head to the withers of her tall son, letting it rest upon her amber-colored coat. "Of course, Mom," he said as he released her. "I'd love to have her meet you. I'm sure she'll think you're great." She stood there, running her hoof up and down his foreleg, her smile still evident even as she slowly began to lower her head once more. "Breakfast is on the table," Carrot said, mostly to the little meal that sat on the dinette set. "Banana bread and some fruit. Don't let it sit and dry up, okay?" "I have such a good son," she said, taking a step back as he opened the door. "So thoughtful of his old mother." "Have a good day, Mom. Love you," he said, trying out into the warm air of the summer morning. "I love you, Carrot. Have a good last day," she replied as he looked down over his shoulder. She watched him trot down the road to the corner. Then he was gone. She stood in the doorway for a while after that, feeling the heat of the morning, then slowly closed the door. She walked slowly back into the kitchen to study the breakfast that the colt had made for her. Cheesecake sat over the meal, looking down upon it. He had made it for her, as he always had, and all she could do was stare at it. Of course he had made it for her. He made her breakfast and often dinner for years. If he had not learned to bake, they probably would have both starved to death. He had earned his mark out of need, not pleasure. If he had not learned to bake, he would have gone out to school most morning with an empty stomach. The morning he had earned the cutie mark that stood upon him, perhaps the most important moment in the life of a pony, she had been upstairs asleep on her bed with some stallion whose name she could not even remember. She looked down at the banana bread, slices of cantaloupe and melon, the perfect presentation laid out for her by a colt who loved her. In a flash, all the stallions who had passed through her life that she could say that drove about her mind. Her father, Carrot, and Carrot's father. She stared back down into her breakfast and saw it, already turning dry at the edges as it sat in the sun that streamed through the windows. As she did, she thought about her freckled, amber-colored colt once more. Despite all that she had put him through, he still loved her. He still wanted her to be a part of his life as it unfolded. Now she wanted to give him something, to be the mother she should have been. She had nothing left to give. As Cheesecake stared down at the plate, small tinkling sounds rose from it. She realized it was the chime of her own tears striking the surface. And of course I brought the most expensive one. Oh yes, of course, mouthed Cupcake, placing the butter and cream back among the small mountain of ice. Soon, she slid down the line of the buffet, adjusting the small items here and there. To her disgust, the stallion followed along, just as he had been since Cupcake had heard him mention her name. Her name and the name of one of her father's businesses. As the breakfast began to wind down, she looked to her employer, Knaps, as he walked among the guests of the country club, chatting with them as she gathered up used plates and old glasses. As this arrogant colt continued to go on and on and on about his lifestyle in a vain attempt to impress her, Cupcake already sensed where he was going, already knew that he would show his cards early. As he poured some juices for some older ponies, she tried to return to her smiles, but as this conceited colt continued his diatribe, he completely misread every signal she sent him. She wished Knaps would come over and simply give her some orders that took her far away from this colt, perhaps out to the cart to put away the plates, or begin gathering up all the tools that caterers brought with them from Knaps' shop. Instead, all she could do was stand there and mouth little responses to the colt's statements about his wealth, his family's aristocratic background, and make little non-committal statements in reply as he wiped across the black apron. Oh, yes, she would state, her eyes focusing far away. Oh, certainly.
Very good, he answered. Saturday then?
What? Asked Cupcake, snapping back to attention, an awful realization striking her.
When should I pick you up?
He asked, his eyebrows arcing into something that may resemble the pose of suggestion, was instead more resembled the pose taken by those having some sort of stroke. I'm sorry, no, she exclaimed, her hoof coming to her mouth. Oh, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. I can't, no, sorry, excuse me, I must speak to my supervisor. At once, he began to walk away. To her horror, he followed. As the last few ponies departing breakfast went past her and heard him calling to her.
Maybe Sunday then. You know, I am familiar with your family.
Cupcake's legs buckled slightly. For what seemed like the 1,000th time in her life, a young stallion betrayed his real interest in her.
I'd love to meet your father. I have a real knack for business, and then...
An awful shock went through her body. A feeling of revulsion that swept through her. As though in slow motion, she turned to look straight back to see this colt's hoof upon her, girdily grabbing for her as he saw his chance for personal advancement escaping his charms. Don't touch me! She prayed aloud. Don't you dare touch me! At once, the sound of crashing silverware rose from across the room. Knaps, a fellow employee, serving spoon, and the few remaining patrons of the breakfast looked to where Cupcake stood, the stallion hovering close by. No! I said no! Leave me alone! She cried, as she turned and ran, actually giving a small kick as a wild horse would, not equestrian in both form and biology. As Cupcake pelted through the distant glass doors that lined the large sunlit room, the stallion turned and looked over the viewpoints within. Seeing none that he considered a threat to his status, he got a small smirk across his lips.
That's funny,
He said to the room at large as he departed.
The fat ones usually appreciate being chatted up.
Silver Spoon heaved in nausea at this statement. When allowed to Knops, he went out to see Cupcake. Cupcake had run far out of the grounds of the country club, so he knew that coming here had been a mistake, as he had been here too many times with Irie. Too many ponies here knew her, knew how powerful and well-off her father was, even if few knew him personally. Cicero had gone with hors d'oeuvres, Knap's partner. Cicero switched with one of the other employees and gone to cater the event up to Hill and Canterlot. It says he had chosen this one because he hoped to be done in time to get to Carrot's party at the mill. But the hope had fled away as to go slowly eat and talk, as Knaps agreed to take lunch on as well. Nancy simply found a large tree to lean against as he shook. Before long, the voice of Silver Spoon echoed across the manicured lawns. She looked to see him trip slightly as he stepped in some golf balls from the putting green. I'm over here! She called, giving a small sob as he did. With that, he trotted over and stood to her, knowing that all she really needed was someone to close by. Silver Spoon himself was in love, in a relationship that was flowering, and together they had compared notes. The cult knew the feelings were welling inside her, so he stood with her, then sat where she sat, waiting for her Knaps. Before long, Cupcake saw Silver Spoon stand. He waved his foreleg across the air, and soon the older mare was with them. Serving Spoon, she asked, would you start getting the lunch buffet ready? Sir, he said, sure. He started to move with his foreleg raised, and a look of worry falling over him. He leaned down and asked, Cupcake? She smiled up to him, and with that, his smile was well off. Oh, Knaps, I'm sorry. After my outburst, after that, they'll never hire you here again, said Cupcake, placing her head across the lap of the older mare. Nothing, saying nothing, my dear, said the voice of the unicorn. After that, they owe you an apology, if anything. Silence hung there. Do you want me to report him to the club manager? He shouldn't have touched... No, replied Cupcake, turning her head to look at the green lawns and fairways beyond. No, he wasn't any different from all the rest, don't you know? All of the culture just wants something from me. To get closer to my father. Something is a way to... Cupcake trailed off. She knew that almost all of them had only seen her as a prospect. In her mind, she saw all the opportunistic faces of all those cults, as she shuddered at the thought of their horrible little plans for her. Instead, she made a list of all the cults and stallions that lived there without question, who knew her grandfathers, her father, her brothers, and Carrot. There's only one cult who loves me for me, she said, blinking as the wetness rolled down her face into the black apron of her employer. Only one cult who doesn't want anything from me. Ah, your cult friend, eh? Replied the older mare as she fixed Cupcake's hair with her magic. I'm happy that you found a pony like that, Cupcake. So very wonderful. Oh, Knaps, I want him to be right with him right now, said Cupcake as he looked to the blue sky. In her mind, she felt Carrot's forelegs around her, driving the remembrance of the foreign, revolting grasp of the arrogant colt from her body. She felt his presence falling over her, and imagined him near her, the thought of herself in his reassuring embrace. I want him to be holding me right now, she said with a whimper. I want my Carrot. Well, I think that Silver Spoon and I can manage if you need to head off, said Knaps as she gently patted the young mare on the head. Cupcake raised herself up and wiped her eyes with the back of her hose. No, she said softly, looking to Knaps. I promise you I stay in. Are you sure? Asked the older mare, rising to her hose. Yes, I'm sure, answered Cupcake. Knaps stared at her for a second, then spoke to her in happy, complicated tones. Cupcake, she began, when Ivory asked me to take you on, I was first a little suspicious, especially since you can imagine you're going to be my competition someday. Cupcake raised her head and wondered where the conversation was going. But, continued the older mare, Cupcake, you've been nothing but an asset to me from the day you started. I know that you're using the money to help your close friends start the business in, and I'd like to say I wish you the best, both of you. If you feel that strongly for him, he must be special. Cupcake smiles back, leading him to hug her employer. With that, the two went out to see lunch. Trammell pulled safety. It was no accident or a scene or a lovey-dovey frou-frou nonsense that had been witnessed upon the bagging flower in the past that called him to do so. Instead, the day was to be a celebration. It was time for festivities to begin.
"Step to it, lads," called the big stallion. "We have soap sauce and carrot cake here to lament upon, so all your lot downstairs."
With that, Carrot pulled his very last bag of flour from beneath the spigot, placed it upon the containers, and watched it disappear down into the bowels of the mill, with a certain pride and smile on his face. Even as he left the bagging stall for the last time, other colts and fillies were already around him, and some sons making little signs of appreciation, wishing him luck. Soon, all had disappeared from down the stairs. As Carrot looked on Trammell, congratulated Soap Suds for signing something to match his mark, and with that he too went downstairs. Trammell turned to Carrot and smiled at him.
"Come now, my fine fellow," said the stallion. "But how do they have a party without one of the guests around on our cadway?"
Carrot returned the smile and looked up at the stallion. "Trammell," he said slowly, I just want to...
"Eh? What's this all about?"
asked Trammell, giving a nervous laugh. Carrot sighed and continued. "Trammell," he said, once again attempting the line of thought that he had begun. I never knew my dad. My grandfather died a few years ago, and I just want to say it's been great. It's been great having an older stallion I could ask about things. You know, to ask things about how it should be going along with Cupcake. I just want to say thanks." Trammell chuckled. Did not know how he felt about being called an older stallion, but he understood. Carrot was being genuinely grateful. All that needs to be said about what happens next is awkward guy hug. The two went down the stairs as well. With that, Carrot embraced the strings of causality around him, and closed the chapter of his life that involved the bagging stall. As the party continued, Ledger reflected upon the table spread before him. Usually, when workers at his mill left during the summer pursued their marks, it was the ice cream that disappeared first, and the cake and cookies as such were the ones left simmering in the midday sun. As he lifted his cake amongst the picnic table, he saw the order reverse. Today it was the products of young Mr. Carrot Cake, now leaving his employ, which had been anxiously gathered by those who sat on the blankets. It was the ice cream that was in danger of melting. He looked up to see the colt gathering up the plates and waving his goodbyes. Ledger saw his daughter Ivory speaking with the various workers too. All too soon she would be leaving him and her mother, departing the big house where she had lived all her life, and off to an internship in Canterlot. As he pondered the fact that his little filly was so grown up, he suddenly felt the need to ingest as much ice cream as he could get away with without seeming as a glutton. He listened as he heard two ponies he had just spoken to talk about her.
"Billy's almost too smart, you know. Clever pony, that one. She'll be running her father's mill inside a decade." "Mill? Ha! Mark my words. She'll be running all pony mill."
I just want to say, when I first read this, I had no idea that Ivory was going to be mayor. Mayor. Ledger almost took out his ice cream while he tried to eat it, and laughed at the statements. His daughter was smart enough to know that running the mill was not her forte. Politics, however. "Mr. Ledger, sir." Ledger put down the tub of vanilla ice cream, and turned to face Carrot with a wide smile and offer a huff.
"Well, Carrot, my colts," he said as he shook hands. "Turning up then. Best of luck. Do not hesitate and ask if you need anything. I mean anything."
"Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. The bonus check was almost too generous," said Carrot, lifting his head and trying to show his appreciation through a wide smile.
"Same as any pony you get from me when they go off to make their mark, my colt," said Ledger, leaning in deeper. "And Carrot, best of luck and everything. I mean everything."
It took Carrot a second to get the drift, but he smiled once more. "Thank you, sir. I'm hoping for the best in that regard, too." With that, Carrot completed his goodbyes. One last look upon the big brick structure, he departed the mill. As he crossed the building, he came to the bridge. Something spun through him as his hose hit the planks. That moment he realized he was actually unemployed. So until the bakery opened, he would have no income. He stopped on the bridge to listen and watched the big mill go round and round with wet sounds. He looked down into the mill pond, felt the river flowing into it. And there he saw the reflection of an amber freckled colt staring up at him. Freckles, underbite, thin. All the old worries floated by him. all the uncertainties. He was taking a risk. He was going out into the world pilotless, knowing only that he knew how to bank and hoping that if he got the business going well, so he'd be able to finally let go. Whatever this was, the thing that Cupcake was keeping a secret from him, he hoped against all hope it would end once he saw that he could make it. As he stared into the reflection, he hoped that he could prove that he could provide for her, for them. He was willing to do anything for her. And that all would be possible. Carrot stared down as the wheel splashed about, and once he was puzzled, a new reflection had appeared there. After an instant, pondering, he knew who it was, and he turned to her. "Oh, Miss Ivory, I'm sorry, I was just—"
"Carrot,"
she said, tilting her head as the front legs rested upon the railing of the bridge.
"You've known me for these many months, been dating my best friend, and you still can't bring yourself to call me Ivory. I hope by this point you'll be alive."
"Oh, really? But you never told me I could. You see," he spoke as he turned to standing on the bridge. She sighed at the saying.
"Walk with me, would you, Carrot?"
she asked. With that, the strings of causality stretched and pulled him away from the mill towards a dim path that led to a beautiful horizon. The two went down to Ponyville, many ponies stopping to greet Ivory. Some even smiled at Carrot and spoke with him as well. Even though he could not remember ever meeting them, they all somehow seemed to know him. He nodded politely as Ivory introduced him. Within him, realization grew. He gave a small gasp. These were players. They were pieces in the game of this. Together, they walked as the warm summer afternoon played out around them. "Miss Ivory," he said, watching her grimace as he used her title once again. I want to thank you for all you've done for me, getting the shop ready for Cupcake and I." Ivory nodded her head. It was obvious, of course, that what he had been doing all along. He noted back at the table in the dance hall, had seen Ivory guiding Cupcake towards him all along. And now they stood outside his shop. He could only ask why. He looked up to the improvised sign above the door. Opening soon, it read in bold front, "Carrot Cake's Bakery Company, LLC, Inc." He looked to see a dubious wrinkle across the face of the mayor. I'm going to think of a better name," he sighed.
"Yes," she said, "that would be for best."
He opened the door, was a little embarrassed to have her see how cluttered and unprepared everything was. Ivory looked up as something metallic rang out. On the chiming of the bell, his bonus check dropped into the cash register. It was an older one, large, heavy, and seemingly made of brass. Carrot had sat up all night teaching himself how to make it work its magic. How did anyone expect their host to use these tiny keys? "Well, it's very simple. You type one, you type the other, and you use the very tip of your hoof." Somehow, it did open at his awkward touch. He looked down. He was rather pleased to see something actually sitting in the drawer, apart from some paper clips and a dust bunny. "Miss Ivory?" he asked, bouncing a little bit as he sighed at the use of her title once more. I had to ask, why would you tell me you tried so hard to get Cupcake and I together?"
"Because you use proper language, Cupcake and I,"
she said with a smirk. Carrot was a touch confused. He walked slowly from behind the counter, joined Ivory, and looking through the dirty windows of the shop. Ponies went by, happy to their routines, and enjoying the summer's day to fill the shop, stifling the human air.
"Cupcake is my dearest friend, Carrot,"
Ivory said, not looking away from the window, but instead still gazing on the streets.
"She has been since her family and mine became close. We went to private school together, spent almost all our free time together. I know her better than any other pony, probably her own family."
Carrot turned to look at her. He marveled at how easy words were for this mare, how calmly she was able to express her ideas, how quickly she was able to add flourish to emphasize her meaning. Perhaps politics would work for her.
"She's clever, sneaky when she needs to be, decisive. I've always been fond of that part of her, and I see you appreciate that too,"
she said, not moving her head. He nodded.
"None of the other coasts did,"
she said, her voice breaking slightly. Ivory startled herself. She shook slightly and turned to face Carrot. She pondered the look he was wearing. As soon as she realized he was reflecting on the phrase he had uttered, the other coats hung an expression.
"You're not like them, Carrot,"
she said as he sat, carefully choosing her words.
"I know you see. From the moment I saw your jaw drop open as you walked by on your first day at the mill, I've been getting to know you."
Carrot's eyes arched high.
"Forgive me,"
she said, looking away deep into the shop. She looked back to him and saw him nod. The understanding part of him that knew Cupcake adored was still there.
You're all aware, of course, about Cupcake, keeping certain aspects of her life from you.
She spoke quietly. She was surprised as he gave a self-conscious laugh. Yeah, I call it the game of this. I don't know what this thing is, but I know it's important to her. So I'll play it. I'll play it as long as it takes. He said, turning his own head to look out on the street, until she feels it's safe to stop.
Yes,
replied Ivory after a short while.
That's an excellent metaphor for it, Kenneth.
He smiled back at her. As the two sat there, the sunlight fell across them, and a single green and blue fly fumbled its way across the big pane of glass, its wings humming.
Kenneth,
she spoke,
the game.
He looked at her, wondered deeply if he had somehow lost control of the metaphor.
To win the game, Kenneth, she continued, all you have to do is be yourself. All that she wants and needs from you is to know that you're not like other cults. The cults is something that you can use. You're set up to win. Every pony in this town wants you to win.
I want you to win.
I want you to win.
See, even Ivory's with me.
Cupcake needs you to win.
His ears perked up and drew in her words.
I know the difficulties you've been through in your life. Never having known your father, your mother's confusing situation. How you had to essentially raise yourself. How despite these things you've remained you. You've become you, the loving, considerate coat. No, stallion that you are.
To his surprise, Ivory flinched forward, coming closer to him and raising her head to meet his.
Do not tell Cupcake I said this under any circumstances.
She spoke in a forcible, earnest tone.
But Carrot, you do not always have to wait for permission. At times it could be fatal. The time will come to win this, as you call it. You may have to let your love guide you.
The mare's gray mane shifted, made her look older, as though she had been thinking about this for months. At the very roots, she saw the pink that she hid from the world.
You love her, don't you, Carrot?
She asked. Yes, I do. I've never loved any mare more, he answered without hesitation.
Then that's all it takes, she said, a smile across her face. I leave for my internship in a few weeks. I'm going to be up at Canterlot. I'll be working under the Vice Chamberlain of Parliament. A VC fancy pants, apparently.
Hallelujah. I'm so glad for you, Ivory, replied Carrot, now understanding her earlier statement fully. She smiled, gave a self-conscious laugh of her own.
I leave her with you, Carrot. Cupcake, the one you put first. It's going to be hard for you, as without my house you'll have to... Well, that's a secret, but... Carrot, no matter how hard it gets, I trust you. I trust in her love for her, your love for her, Carrot. And Carrot, there's no pony I trust more with something so dear to me as my best friend.
Carrot took a deep breath and looked back to her. Slowly, gingerly, the two leaned together. Ivory was not as warm, her hug not nearly as personal as the ones Cupcake gave so willingly, yet the emotion was there, and Carrot accepted happily. She asked for no party. Something about the guest list bothered her. When the 3 weeks, Ivory was gone, departing on a morning train along the winding tracks through the mountains into the capital beyond. I was looking over my old videos, the ones from 2014, 2015, and I'm kind of surprised at some of the things that showed up there. Like, for instance, Tears of Gaia, I thought I had done earlier, but instead it was early 2015. I thought I had done Point of No Return earlier, but I was surprised. And I was surprised of how some of the other things merged. Like, for instance, the Barrelverse, i.e., a Harry problem. That was one of the first fix we did in the first year. Amazing when I think about it. This means that Barrelverse, a story that right now we're doing 7 days in June, a almost yearly story, has been a part of this channel for a long time. And some of the other multiverse fics we've done, it's been quite alright. Makes me think of how in 2015, a lot of weird things happened. Caused me almost worried that if I was always going to be slowing down, but because I love doing this, I love to read, I kept on. And in 2016, that's when I moved to the new studio. And I saw the first fic I kind of read when I was in the new studio. Rainbows and Royalty. It's kind of weird to think of all the things that I have done. All the fics I've read. And some of them are shorter than you think. Maybe that's just the way time handles, huh?